Hello, everyone, once again. This is Rob, and welcome back to Media Awareness and an album ranking video by request. However, before I get to that, just a really quick apology. I'm still not quite myself. I have a very sick dog, and he is at the end of his life, and um, I have been with him, and he has been by my side, and I've just been trying to get through that and sort of just uh, let him know that I'm here for him in his end days. So please bear with me if I'm not quite my enthusiastic self. I'm trying my best to at least be here for you guys and make some videos that I'm able to make for you. So here I am, and I hope that you guys are all doing well out there in YouTube land. Um, Also, before I continue with anything with regard to the topic of this video, I do want to actually remind you all that the fundraiser continues. For those of you unaware, I am a disabled individual and I use a motorized wheelchair slash scooter all day, every day for my independence. I pride myself on my independence, and this is why I'm reaching out to you, my YouTube community. My insurance will not cover anything with regard to my scooter. They view it as a luxury item, despite the fact that it's all I can use. I'm unable to use a standard wheelchair due to my dexterity issues and only having primary use of one hand specifically, and uh, not being able to use any other type of wheelchair or scooter for that matter. So it's imperative that I have parts on hand for when parts begin to fail, some of which have already started to be alarming to me. So any and all support is welcome. There is a spot fund account linked in two places below. One place below the title of this video in the description itself, and there's a separate section below that as well where you can find uh, a other link for the spot fund itself. Um, any and all support is welcome. I did receive some recent donations, and I really appreciate that. You guys are wonderful, and no matter the amount, it means the world to me. If you're not able to contribute, just like and share, spread the word about media awareness and my channel. I do uh, reactions to film trailers, music videos, um, album reviews, uh, TV reviews, book reviews. I do lots of different things on this channel. So there's a lot to choose from. Album suggestions. You can check out my videos on my channel and see what, if anything, interests you. And if it does, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Also, I do want to thank those recent members of my YouTube family for joining. I really appreciate that. You guys are wonderful. Thank you so much as well. So this is an album ranking video by request, as I said, and this request was actually given to me about 2 months ago or so. So I'm just getting to it now, and there's been a lot going on, as many of you are aware. However, uh, I needed some time to digest the news that we got regarding this band. So this video, as the title suggests, is focusing on the progressive metal band Dream Theater. And about a month or so ago, roughly 2 months ago, I want to say 1.5, 2 months ago, we as Dream Theater fans were made aware that Mike Portnoy is returning formally to Dream Theater as a band, and Mike Mangini has stepped down as the drummer of Dream Theater for the past several albums they've done. Mike Portnoy, of course, has not been laying low. He's been out with other bands, um, and I've seen him perform with Flying Colors, the Winery Dogs, Sons of Apollo, Neil Morris, Transatlantic, and he has always been involved in different projects, even with his time in Dream Theater. So, my question, and if anyone can answer this in the comment section, I would really love to know. And that would be, is Mike Portnoy going to continue working with Billy Sheen and Richie Kotzen in the Winery Dogs? Is he going to continue working with Steve Morris, Dave LaRue, Casey McPherson, and Neil Morris in Flying Colors? Um, Transatlantic has pretty much made it clear that they're at the end of their tenure. I mean, we may see a reunion later on down the road again, but I don't foresee that happening considering the last album Transatlantic put out was a live album called Final Flight, which implies the finality of that project. I'm hoping that's not the case, but it seems to be the case. With all that stated, though, I really would like to know if Mike is going to be still working with these other individuals that he has worked with so um, prominently over the years and so proficiently as well. So if anyone knows, please tell me in the comment section because I enjoyed seeing him play with the Winery Dogs, Sons of Apollo, Flying Colors, and even with Neil Morris during Neil's first tour back in 2003 when Mike was still a member of Dream Theater. But so that right there leads me to believe that Mike will not be just focusing on Dream Theater. But if anyone knows for certain, please let me know in the comment section. I would love to know. I'd love to know your thoughts on Mike rejoining Dream Theater. Mike Mangini has very graciously stepped down from his role as drummer, making way for Mike Portnoy to return to the band full time. So I'm going to presume we have a new album to look forward to probably in the new year. But in the meantime, we have a ranking of the existing albums. And I thought, what better time than now to cover that news of Mike returning to the band, as it is a band that he founded with John Petrucci and a band that he was an integral part of throughout the um, first 20 years or so of their history. So, let us begin the ranking. So, my apologies for my face getting suddenly brighter. I haven't suddenly become a vampire. However, you never know. But I have my WordPad document on my screen so that way I can look at what's here and I can better keep track of where I'm at with the albums itself. So Dream Theater released 15 official studio albums, and I'm going to be going through them and giving you my rankings from worst to best, despite the fact that Dream Theater has not had a bad album. They have had albums that I prefer over others, and this is all opinion based, so feel free to attack me in the comment section if you like for your opinions on these albums differing from mine, as I know they're going to. Um, so starting at number 15, a very controversial move on my part. This is at the bottom of the list, working my way up to the top. So we have from 15 to 1, and my least favorite Dream Theater album at number 15 is Images and Words from 1992. And I know this is a lot of people's favorite Dream Theater album, and it just never resonated with me. And I'll tell you why. Back in the late 1990s, roughly 1998 or so, friend of mine named Matt brought over to my house a copy of Images and Words on CD, and he lent it to me to listen to. And I listened to it, but the production sound of the early 90s recording just it did not sit well with me. And it really turned me off to the content on the album. Now, as far as the content on the album, it's all over the place. Um, it's heavy in parts, it's light in parts, it has a lot of dynamic range in terms of material. But I feel that that also works against the album in a lot of ways too. It has something for everyone, but it's almost like it's going out of its way to please everyone in that regard. The first song on the album, Pull Me Under, was a fairly successful hit for the band. But my favorite song on Images and Words is Metropolis Part 1. And I've always loved Metropolis Part 1, and I would love to hear a better produced version of Metropolis Part 1. We got reworkings of Pull Me Under, some other tracks on the album Another Day, on their Greatest Hits album. But although they sounded better at that point in time, I really feel like Metropolis Part 1 could really benefit from that same reworking in terms of the production on it. But that's really why I think Images and Words falls so low on my list. That and the band was still technically in its infancy and still growing as a musical force to be reckoned with eventually. So they were honing their craft, yet they were sort of tied or limited in regard of their label Warner at the time and um, the production that they were um, under the confines, if you will, of. So that is why Images and Words is so low. The songs just really don't do it for me for the most part. Some do, like I said, Metropolis Part 1 I think is brilliant. I love Pull Me Under, I love Another Day. I could do without a lot of the rest of the album. Now, if a Change of Season was an EP that the band put out as their, I believe, third studio release, and it was a one original track that was supposed to be on disc two, pardon me, of Images and Words, but we never got a disc two because the label Warner was against this band having a two disc album, being that they were so new on the scene. So now that I've rambled enough about that, if a Change of Season was on the album, it might feature higher on my list, and if the production on top of that, with the Change of Season being included, I think it would definitely rank higher. So, with that stated, at number 15, at number 14, we had Black Clouds and Silver Linings. And this was released in, let's see here, 2009. And this album was the final album to feature Mike Portnoy on drums up to this point in time. And I remember being excited buying the album and not being very excited hearing it. It has its moments, but the album it really doesn't hit for me. And there's nothing that really stands out as being overly memorable for me specifically. But even though it has songs that are decent and are really well performed. It just doesn't catch me. It doesn't grab me the way other albums in their collection have. Like I said, Dream Theater does not have a bad album, but this just falls very low on my list. So, number 13, moving along, we have the first album to feature Mike Mangini on drums, and that is a dramatic turn of events, which was released, let's see here, in 2011. And I, the more I listen to this album, the more I realize it follows the blueprint, if you will, of Images and Words in terms of song structure and presentation. And that's not why it falls low on my list. I just feel it's a formulaic album that was done to simply um, uh, continue the band's upward trajectory at that point in time, in my opinion. I do think it's a good album. I just don't think it's a great album. And the production, though, is very good on this album. And the songwriting, for the most part, is very good as well. It just doesn't really have anything that stands out for me in terms of content that I can really think of. Much the way Black Clouds and Silver Lining, it really doesn't resonate for me. Um, so, we're moving along. We have at number 12 the self titled album Dream Theater. And when this album came out, I really did not like this album at all. I didn't like the production, I didn't like the writing, I didn't like the performances. My opinion on this has changed. I think it has uh, a good diversity in the material that's on the album. I do like certain songs on this album. I think the Illumination Theory is a good ending song, despite the very obvious, at least obvious to me, Electric Light Orchestra riffs that are in it, in terms of keyboard fills, uh, mimicking that of the Electric Light Orchestra song Telephone Line, for those of you aware of that song. Not sure if that was intentional or not. It could have been purely accidental, but that's what I heard when I listened to that. I also heard some ELP on certain other songs as well. And for those of you who don't know what ELP is, Emerson Lake and Palmer. Google them. Great band. So, uh, I actually like songs that people don't like in this album. Um, Through the Looking Glass, I think is a great song. And although it has a very rushed intro on the guitar in terms of the guitar sound and the way it's structured, reminding me of a song that could have been on Moving Pictures by Rush. It's still a really good album, and I love that song. I love the good majority of the album, and we're getting higher on the list now, so you'll hear me be saying a lot more positive things as opposed to negative. So, with that being said, we have Systematic Chaos, which was released in 2007. And this is another album that when it came out, it did not really sit well with me at all. It didn't really connect with me. And I know it's different for lots of other people. Lots of other people loved this album when it came out. I did not. This album really didn't connect with me until roughly 2020. So a while after it was actually released. Moving along from 2003, we have Train of Thought. And this is coming in at number 10 on my ranking list here. And Train of Thought is it's a strong album. It really is. Opens with As I Am, um, which is a really strong piece, and has a lot of good songs on this album. But for me, at this stage of my life, it's an album that is not as diverse as I would like in terms of a balance of elements. It's a lot heavier than a lot of other things at the moment in my life, and I feel that the heavy tone is consistent throughout the album, whereas on other Dream Theater albums, there is a good balance between heavy and light. And that was Train of Thought from 2003. Moving along at number 9, I believe. Yes, number 9. We have 6 Degrees of Interturbulence from 2002. This was an album that I had the day it came out. My biggest gripe with 6 Degrees is it's a 2 CD set, and although I do like abundance of progressive rock material, progressive metal material, I think it was too much. I actually would preferred the second disc being the album. That's it. The suite that is just amazing, in my opinion, being the album itself. That's all I needed. At number 8, we have the band's debut album, When Dream and Day Unite. I think this is a really strong album. The material is strong. They really had a well crafted collection of material that they went in the studio with, and they're obviously really well rehearsed when they went in. And it just comes off sounding amazing. There is a lot of diversity in terms of playing. You have a lot of keyboard, a lot of bass, a lot of simple work by Mike. Everything is up front. Amazing guitar work from John Petrucci. And you can actually hear John Mayer playing bass in this album, which is an amazing feat in and of itself because he's usually down in the mix on a lot of these albums I mentioned. But he is really up in the mix on this particular album and sounding quite amazing, I might add as well. So, like I said, that was number 8, When Dream and Day Unite, the debut album of Dream Theater. It also features a different lead singer. All the other albums featured James LeBray on lead vocals. When Dream and Day Unite, they feature Charlie Dominici on lead vocals. And he has sort of this combination of a Jeff Tate style vocal mixed with that Billy Joel, like if that's even possible. But that's what he reminds me of. So, just for some context, and this album was released in 1989, so really far back there. So then, moving along at number 7, we have the album Awake. Now, this is the second Dream Theater album I ever heard, and it was also compliments of my friend Matt, who uh, had actually brought over Images and Words for me to hear at first, and I didn't care for that. And he said, try this out. So I popped in this cassette of Awake, and I loved Awake, and I still love Awake. I think it has some really strong material on it, and it was also the last album to feature Kevin Moore on uh, keyboards. He left the band following or during the recording of this album. I'm fairly certain. So that was number 7, Awake, released in 1994. And number 6, we have 2016's album, The Astonishing. Which is a 2 CD concept album. And I honestly love this album. I think it's a great album. I think it's really underrated. I think a lot of people bash this album unnecessarily. I do think this album could have benefited from being 1 CD as opposed to 2. I would also say that the overture is very lackluster on this album. But once you're into the meat and potatoes of the album itself, I hate using that saying. um, you're actually into the actual content. It really hits, and it hits hard. As stated, that was number 6, 2016's The Astonishing. Moving along, number 5, we have 1997's Falling into Infinity. Now, this album, there's a lot of interesting things about this album. This album was supposed to be also 2 CDs, and during the recording of this album, it was rearranged a lot by the producer, and the album itself ended up being something entirely different than what the band had envisioned, at least the majority of the band. The album itself, it's strong for me. I don't have any problems with this album. In listening to the demos for this album, however, you do get a feel for what the band wanted as a whole, as opposed to what the finished product was. And it is drastically different. Drastically. But even with that stated, it is a fantastic album. And number 4 on my list of Dream Theater albums, A View from the Top of the World, which was released in 2021 and was the last studio album now to feature Mike Mangini, as Mike Portnoy is officially rejoined, as stated. So, this album really blew me away. When I heard this album, I was amazed at how good this was. The Alien opens the album really strong, and it just goes and goes and goes, and the album never falters. It really just has this energy that flows throughout. Number 3, we have Distance Over Time, released in 2019. And I really, really loved it. And it made me really excited for the follow up of View from the Top of the World. So, Distance Over Time has an interesting. You could look these up on YouTube if they're still available. They had these recording sessions that they were doing with this album and writing and recording sessions. And it's interesting to see that. And for me, this album sounds great. Lyrically, it's sound. Nobody sounds bad on this album. Um, and much like A View from the Top of the World, um, everyone is in top form. And uh, James LeBray, everyone is aging, so we're all um, suffering the pitfalls of age. And unfortunately, with James being a vocalist, he has to deal with that as an issue and not being able to hit a lot of the notes that he used to be able to hit as easily. And this Since Over Time is a good example of him not pushing himself. Same with The View from the Top of the World. And I think that really makes the album stand a lot stronger for me, at least as a fan. So, then we move on my list to number 2. Now, for those of you who know this album's list, you know what's left on this list. And at number 2, we have Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from Memory, 1999. And this was the album that really got me in the Dream Theater. My friend Matt had brought it over, and he left a copy of it with me. And I listened to it time and time and time again. I wore out the copy. I bought an original. I wore out that original on CD and had to replace it. So that gives you an idea of how much I love this album. And it's a concept album, which is why I placed it at number 2. That I feel that my number 1 pick also has a lot more diversity. But number 2 seemed appropriate for this album because although a lot of it can stand on its own and does stand on its own very well, it all has this interconnected theme. And if you follow the concept of the album itself, rather, when you're listening to it, you'll understand what I mean. But it is really an amazing album. Which brings us to number 1. And number 1 is an album called Octavarium from 2005. And this was actually the last tour that I saw them on. Um, and my ex-wife, Crystal, and I, who I'm still friends with, we saw this tour and at the Tower Theater in Philadelphia, where we had seen them perform Train of Thought as well. And Octavarium just blew my mind. We actually went to our local record store, the Joe Nardone's Gallery of Sound, which I'm proud to say is still around. There is a local record store. So if you are in northeastern Pennsylvania, make a stop at Joe Nardone's Gallery of Sound, located on Monday Street in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. It is the only place you want to go to buy music. And believe me, the selection is outstanding. And we were fortunate to have the album the day of its release in 2005. And we drove around listening to it in my van. That's how good it was. We didn't want to shut it off. And it was just, from beginning to end, you have this diversity of intensity, you have emotion, you have heavy, you have light, you have all these different elements of music. It covers all ranges of the sonic palette. And it ends off with the epic track itself, Octavarium, which is an amazing track. It's a spellbinding track. It really has this intense quality about it that I think really, really sums up how good Dream Theater is as a band. And this album is a perfect example. And this is the album I play for people when I want to get an idea of what Dream Theater sounds like. If I put on an album, not a mix that I put together per se, I put on Octavarium. So, I'm going to do a quick recap, since that was also requested when I was initially contacted. So let us scroll back to the top of the list, and I will just go down. I will count as I go. So number 15, Images and Words. Number 14, Black Clouds, Silver Linings. Number 13, A Dramatic Turn of Events. Number 12, the self-titled Dream Theater album. Number 11, Systematic Chaos. Number 10, Train of Thought. Number 9, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. Number 8, When Dream and Day Unite. Number 7, Awake. Number 6, The Astonishing. Number 5, Falling into Infinity. Number 4, A View from the Top of the World. Number 3, Distance Over Time. Number 2, Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from Memory. And number 1, Octavarium. So I hope you enjoyed this ranking of Dream Theater's albums, in my opinion. I want to stress that because this is not concrete. I'm going to make myself not look like a vampire. Give me a moment here. Once again, a reminder, the fundraiser continues. Please donate what you can. If my scooter goes, I am a fish out of water, unable to use anything else. I don't want to have to rely on other people. I'm an independent person in my everyday life, and I pride myself on that. So do what you can. I really appreciate that. And like I said, please forgive my lack of over the top enthusiasm. My puppy is next to me here, and he's just looking up at me, and he's not doing good. He's at the end of his days, so not much longer, and sadly, that'll be it. He's been there for me through thick and thin. His name is K9, like the dog from Doctor Who, and that was his reason why I named him K9. But I digress. I'm sorry. I'm worried about him. This is Rob with Media Awareness. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so, and become part of my YouTube family. Like and share if you liked what I did here, and share. Please spread the word about Media Awareness, and stay tuned for more reaction videos, more amazing content to come. This is Rob with Media Awareness. I will see you all soon. Have a wonderful morning, noon, or night, wherever you are. Take care. Bye.